It's an unfortunate fact of life that many investors will right now be sitting on what I am sure will be temporary capital losses, but those losses are there and very visible. And it's important as we approach the end of a tax year to think of how best to possibly use those losses. If you could crystallise those losses now but not come out of the market and actually take the commercial loss, that could be a good thing if that loss can be carried forward to be set against future gains that you hope to make on the assets that you are disposing of and then reacquiring. I'll come on to those reacquisition rules in a minute. So the basic principle is if we can dispose of an asset but not come out of the market, realise the loss, that will be a good thing if we can use the loss against future gains. But we need to remember what the basic rules are. When you make a capital loss in a tax year, it has first to be set against other capital gains made in that year. So if earlier in the year you made a capital gain that might well have been exempt anyway under the annual exemption, if you make a loss in this year by doing one of these loss triggers, then you're going to have to take the loss back and set it against that gain and then possibly waste the use of the annual exemption. So whilst creating losses in a tax year with a view to carrying them forward is a perfectly acceptable idea, provided you can overcome the anti-avoidance bed and breakfast provisions, which I'll talk about in just a minute, then bear in mind very carefully, if you made earlier gains in this year, they're going to be set against those gains first, and then you may have an unused annual allowance. So subject to that, what can we do? Well, the basic identification rules for capital gains tax and equity-based holdings are that if you make a disposal and you reacquire the same security within the next 30 days of making the disposal and the reacquisition will effectively be ignored, so you won't achieve your purpose of crystallising the capital loss. So we have to look, if we want to create the loss but go back into the market, the key is we want to create the loss but not lose the holding, because we expect it to go back up again in the future when we come out of this awful time that we're currently in. These losses are hopefully all temporary. How can we do that? Well, it's the various bed and strategies. So the idea is to sell the security to create the loss, to sell the investment, to sell the unit trust, to sell the shareholding that you have to create the loss, and then reacquire it, but not personally. So reacquire it either 30 days later, but you're taking a massive risk then with the volatility in the market when it comes to the reacquisition. So you could reacquire it within your ISA if that's possible, reacquire it within your pension fund if that's possible. You could make an actual commercial disposal to your spouse and then to you. And that could work because it's still being held in the family. The other way that you could think of is to sell the asset and reacquire something not the same so as to trigger those anti-avoidance provisions, but something very similar that you're comfortable with. So not taking the commercial loss, having access to the hoped for upside. So lots to think about when thinking about using losses. Definitely crystallising the loss to carry forward against future gains is a good idea, but subject to all of those things I've just said. The anti-avoidance provisions, making sure you haven't made an earlier gain and denying yourself the use of the annual exemption for this year, and thinking just very carefully about the strategy before you do it. So this is a classic area for where an individual shouldn't really trust themselves to do it, and advice it's absolutely necessary. There's a really good explanation of how those loss identification rules go and run within the TechLink chapter on capital gains.